I woke up on a Monday morning feeling healthy, except for one thing. I could not feel my toes on both feet. They were numb. I didn't know what to make of it, so I shrugged it off and went on with my day. The next morning, I woke up and both my feet were numb, up to the ankles. That evening, my husband and I made a trip to the emergency department where I was seen by a doctor who examined me, and he performed a little mental test on me. He ruled out anything neurological. He asked me if I was going through any extra stress or anxiety. I told him that we're a busy family and we're used to a little stress that comes with our responsibilities. He was satisfied with my answer and simply told me that this was caused by anxiety, even though I was not anxious. But he gave me a sedative and he sent us home. The next morning was the third day of my symptoms. I woke up to the numbness ascending my legs. Later, I began to feel unwell and wanted to reach my husband at work. As I was leaving a message with his assistant, my speech was slurred. I wondered if I was having a stroke. I remember feeling so embarrassed while I was talking. A short time later, my husband called me back, but by then I was feeling better and my speech was back to normal. But he insisted on calling an ambulance anyway. The paramedics also asked me if I was feeling any stress or anxiety, and I gave them the same answer I had given the doctor the evening before. They also simply told me that this was caused by anxiety, this was very common, and that they go out on a lot of these calls. They talked me out of going to the hospital. I was relieved that I didn't have to go, but their explanation just didn't make any sense to me. When the paramedics left, I went on Google and I read that panic attacks and extreme anxiety can be linked to numbness. The only problem was I wasn't feeling anxious and I was not having a panic attack. That evening, I found myself almost too weak to climb the few steps up to the bedroom level. I could barely lift each leg over each step, and my arms felt so weak. My husband and I just assumed that this was caused by fatigue. When we reached the landing, I collapsed on the ground, and my husband had to drag me over to our bedroom and prop me up in bed. 1 hour later, I began to experience shortness of breath. I sat up and I tried to breathe, but I was really struggling. My arms and legs felt so weak, they felt like feathers. We called an ambulance, which came quickly, and by then I had collapsed again at the landing at the top of the stairs. So the paramedics carried me out on a chair and brought me back to the same hospital. Although my time in the emergency department felt like a blur, I do remember a few things. While sitting in a wheelchair waiting to be examined, I suddenly became so violently ill. I was beside myself with nausea and vomiting. At one point, a doctor was standing beside me, and I remember turning to her, begging her to help me, that I could barely breathe. I felt like I was pleading for my life. And she said to me, "Don't worry about it. We'll intubate you if we have to." I felt so relieved that help was close by. My husband was sent home to sleep and I was taken for a CT scan. I remember thrashing inside the machine as if there was an elephant on my chest. I was brought back to the examining room and I lay there, thrashing from side to side. I felt like each breath was going to be my last. There were 2 women in the room with me, one on each side of my bed. I didn't know if they were nurses or personal support workers. I turned to the young woman on my right and I gently touched her arm. I told her that I could barely breathe and that I was in distress. She began screaming at me and accusing me of hitting her. She threatened to call the security guards and told me that if I didn't stop being violent with her, that she would have the security guards tie my hands and feet to the bed. I was so scared. I felt so vulnerable and alone. I felt powerless. I was laying there, surrounded by strangers, with an employee threatening me. I took a chance and I turned to the other woman on my left, hoping that she would be compassionate, and I could see she looked visibly uncomfortable. I asked her, "Aren't they going to intubate me? I'm having such a hard time breathing." The woman who had been yelling at me started laughing at me loudly and mocking me. I could not believe it. I thought I was going to die right then and there without my loved ones around me. I thought about my 6-year-old son and how traumatized he would be if I died. I thought to myself, this is it. I'm going to die right here, right now. It felt so unreal. And that's the last thing I remember. Laughter. Takeaways for families experiencing GBS. Ask respectful questions and advocate for someone you suspect to have GBS. If you hear of someone having ascending numbness or paralysis, ask the ER staff to consider GBS. Takeaways for hospital staff. Although a rare disease, GBS can be fatal if undiagnosed, as a significant number of GBS patients will require ventilation to survive, and some will even experience cardiac failure. Thank you for watching part 1 of my journey with Guillain-Barré Syndrome. Part 2 coming soon. Thank you.